Cheap DIY garden transformation, easy flower gardening tips for beginners. When I approach the transformation of a garden, I see it not as random planting, but as a design, a carefully structured vision, much like an architect conceives a building. The soil, the light, the air, these are the foundations, the natural materials I must respect before drawing the first line of my plan. A garden is never simply a place to grow plants. It is a crafted environment, an outdoor room with boundaries, layers and focal points, a place where beauty and function coexist. What makes it even more inspiring is that such a space can be created without excess spending, with imagination guiding every choice, and with resourcefulness turning what others overlook into elements of design. Every project begins with a vision. Before a shovel meets the earth, I stand back and imagine the story of the space. Will it be a sanctuary alive with the colours of blooming flowers, a retreat where seating rests under soft shade, or perhaps a harmonious union of vegetables and blossoms? Like the blueprint of a home, this vision is a compass. It prevents waste, ensures clarity, and brings unity to the final design. Even the smallest balcony, when approached with this deliberate thought, can embody a sense of grandeur. Design begins with awareness of conditions. Sunlight sketches its patterns on the ground. Soil reveals its composition. The presence of wind, water, and shade dictates possibilities. Just as the architect studies the orientation of a building to capture light, I study the land to determine what will thrive. The eastern corner, bathed in morning light, may cradle blooms that open with dawn. A shaded wall may protect tender plants. Sandy soil demands resilience. Clay soil requires patience and amendment. To listen to the site is to respect nature's laws, and true design flourishes only when it is in dialogue with those laws. A garden on a budget thrives on repurposing. I see beauty in the overlooked, structure in the forgotten. A weathered ladder, dismissed as useless, becomes a tiered stand that elevates pots into sculptural form. A rusted bucket transforms into a rustic planter, bringing character and age into the design. Wooden pallets, repainted and placed with intention, turn into walls of green. Even fragments of broken ceramics, when set with care, create mosaics of texture. This act of reuse is not only economical, it is poetic. It tells a story of continuity where old objects are not discarded but reborn into new purpose. Seeds are the raw foundation of life. They are to the garden what sketches are to architecture, the beginning of form, the first hint of possibility. Mature plants purchased at cost may fill space instantly, but seeds teach patience and reward care. They allow me to witness the unfolding narrative of growth. For beginners, flowers such as marigolds, zinnias, sunflowers, and cosmos are forgiving. They rise quickly, bloom brightly, and demand little. Their growth is a lesson. Beauty is not a product to be bought whole, but a process to be nurtured from its inception. Form is essential. Just as architecture relies on walls, corridors, and height to shape experience, the garden requires borders, layers, and curves. Tall plants create the backdrop, mid-level shrubs shape the middle, and low-growing flowers define the front. This layering builds depth, guiding the eye through space, making even a small plot appear expansive. Natural edging, stones gathered from a walk, bricks reclaimed from a construction site, wood salvaged from forgotten piles, frames the garden and gives it distinction. These lines and layers are the skeleton of the design, the structure that elevates a collection of plants into a coherent landscape. No structure endures without nourishment. In the garden, nourishment is compost, the quiet transformation of waste into fertile wealth. Leaves fall, scraps decay, clippings gather, and with time they merge into a substance rich in nutrients. A simple bin crafted from wood or a drilled container can host this alchemy. By creating compost, I join the rhythm of the earth itself, turning refuse into renewal. This act eliminates the need for expensive fertilizers while grounding the design in sustainability. An ethic is as important to the gardener as it is to the architect of cities. Detail breathes life into form. Just as the curve of a staircase or the glow of a lamp alters the feeling of a room, the garden becomes memorable through subtle accents. Solar lanterns strung across a trellis, rocks painted with vivid colour to mark plants, stepping stones embedded with fragments of glass. These are the ornaments of the space. They need not be costly. They are simple, personal, and transformative, giving intimacy and character to the design. In these gestures, the garden ceases to be generic and becomes uniquely yours. Selection of plants is the backbone of longevity. Perennials, steady and enduring, return year after year like pillars holding up a structure. Lavender brings fragrance and calm. Coneflowers add strength and height. Black-eyed Susans radiate warmth. Around them, annuals contribute bursts of seasonal vibrancy like festival banners in a town square. Native plants, deeply attuned to their environment, stand resilient with minimal care. They are the allies of the gardener, requiring less water and less labour while ensuring harmony with the land. By blending permanence with seasonality, the garden achieves both continuity and change. Water, the invisible architect, must be managed with wisdom. To water at dawn or dusk is to respect the rhythm of evaporation, keeping the gift of moisture where it is needed. Collecting rain in barrels is an act of humility, acknowledging that design must work with the sky as much as with the soil. Grouping plants by water needs ensures balance and efficiency, creating micro-communities that sustain each other. Here lies the ethic of stewardship. Design that honours resources, not design that wastes them. And throughout this process, one must accept that imperfection is part of the design. Architecture evolves through revisions. Gardens evolve through seasons. Failure is not a flaw, it is a lesson guiding the next attempt. A simple journal to record planting dates, successes and setbacks becomes as valuable as any sketchbook. It shapes the gardener into a designer who learns not only from triumphs, but also from missteps. In this way, each year brings refinement, each season builds upon the last, until the garden reflects not only nature's beauty, but also the designer's growth. The heart of a low-cost garden makeover lies not in material wealth, but in imagination and patience. By envisioning carefully, reusing wisely, planting intentionally and learning continuously, the outdoor space becomes a crafted sanctuary. It is no longer an empty patch of earth, but a living design, layered with meaning and shaped by hand. It is proof that architecture need not be confined to stone and steel. It flourishes equally in soil and sunlight, in petals and leaves, in spaces that invite rest, joy, and pride. When I continue the journey of designing a garden, I shift my focus from the foundation of vision and planning toward the rhythm of space, the flow that guides the body and the eye as one moves through it. A garden is not static. It is meant to be walked, to be experienced from multiple angles, to reveal different faces depending on where one stands. Just as a building invites visitors through hallways, staircases, and courtyards, the garden must provide passages, pauses, and destinations. This is how it becomes more than a patch of land. It becomes a narrative that unfolds with every step. Paths are the veins of this living architecture. They do not simply lead from one place to another. They dictate the pace, the atmosphere, the sense of journey. A straight path, edged with bricks or stones, creates order and clarity, suggesting formality. A winding path, softened with gravel or mulch, slows the walker, encouraging discovery, creating surprise. Even stepping stones arranged irregularly across the grass create a rhythm, a visual beat that draws the feet forward. These paths can be formed from reclaimed materials, broken tiles, fragments of concrete, pieces of wood, assembled with creativity rather than cost. They provide structure, guiding movement through the garden, and in doing so, they transform scattered elements into a coherent whole. Every space benefits from focal points. In architecture, it may be a doorway framed by columns or a staircase spiraling upward. In the garden, a focal point can be a large urn, a bench beneath a tree, a tall plant that commands attention, or even a sculpture fashioned from reclaimed objects. These focal points act as anchors, holding the composition together. Without them, the eye wanders aimlessly. With them, the space has direction, emphasis, and intention. What is remarkable is that focal points do not require expensive purchases. A chair painted in bold colour, an upcycled window frame hung as garden art, or a cluster of tall sunflowers rising like towers All of these can serve as anchors, sculpting the gaze and shaping the experience of the space. Seating is the invitation to linger, the gesture that tells the visitor this is not merely a passage, but a destination. Just as an architect designs courtyards and balconies where people may gather or rest, the gardener must create pockets of comfort. A wooden pallet can become a rustic bench, a cluster of cushions atop weatherproof crates can form a lounge, a hammock strung between trees can turn a corner into a retreat. The materials need not be new, their transformation into furniture lies in paint, fabric and arrangement. These seats, placed in shaded corners or sunlit patches, convert the garden into an extension of the living room, a place not only to observe, but also to dwell. Verticality is another dimension often overlooked. Buildings rise, they do not exist only on the ground plane. Gardens too must claim height. Vertical gardening transforms blank walls, fences and trellises into living tapestries. A simple wooden frame, wire mesh or repurposed ladder can support climbing vines, beans or flowering plants that cascade downward. Hanging baskets bring life into airspace. Shelves stacked with small pots create tiers of greenery. This vertical design expands the capacity of small gardens, making them appear larger, fuller and more immersive. It is an economical use of dimension, multiplying space without expanding ground. Water, when introduced as a feature, alters atmosphere in profound ways. A fountain, no matter how small, adds movement and sound. Even a simple bowl of water with floating flowers reflects the sky and calms the mind. A repurposed pot fitted with a small pump can become a bubbling fountain. The sound of trickling water softens noise, enhances tranquility, and deepens the sense of sanctuary. Like light in a building, water in a garden defines mood. It is not about grandeur, but about presence, an element that reminds us of continuity, of flow, of life. Lighting is the soul of evening design. As daylight fades, the garden need not vanish into darkness. Just as architectural lighting reveals form and texture at night, soft illumination in a garden creates intimacy. Solar-powered lanterns strung across branches, fairy lights wrapped around trellises, or candles placed in glass jars all bring the space to life. The play of shadow and glow makes the garden not only usable, but enchanting after sunset. These lights, inexpensive and often powered by the sun itself, expand the garden's hours, inviting gatherings, reflection, and serenity long into the night. Texture and layering are critical in shaping a tactile and visual experience. In architecture, contrast between smooth stone, rough wood, and polished metal gives depth. In the garden, contrast is achieved through foliage. Large, broad leaves juxtaposed against fine, delicate fronds create visual rhythm. Grasses swaying against the sturdiness of shrubs add movement. Colours too must be layered. Deep greens provide the backdrop, while blooms in bold shades offer bursts of drama, and pastel flowers soften edges. This orchestration of texture and colour ensures the garden is not flat, but rich, dimensional, and alive. Seasonality must be embraced as part of the design. A building stands the same year round, but a garden is a dynamic composition that changes with time. The architect of a garden does not resist this cycle, but celebrates it. Spring brings tender shoots and fresh greens. Summer bursts with fullness and colour. Autumn introduces warm hues, dried grasses, and sculptural seed heads. Winter pares the garden back to structure, exposing lines of branches, stones, and edges. By choosing plants that complement each season, the garden tells an evolving story, always familiar, yet always different. This seasonality ensures that the garden remains engaging, never static, offering a new perspective with every return. Sustainability is the ethic that must underpin every choice. A garden designed with care should not exhaust resources but regenerate them. Collecting rainwater is one practice. Using mulch, straw, bark, or even shredded newspaper retains soil moisture and reduces weeds. Planting natives ensures resilience and minimizes dependence on constant care. Companion planting, where species support one another by deterring pests or enriching soil, creates balance and harmony. These strategies are not only economical, they are ethical, ensuring the garden thrives without burdening its environment. And as the design takes form, the human presence must not be forgotten. A garden is for people as much as it is for plants. It is a place to rest, to gather, to reflect. It is a space where children play, where families dine, where solitude is savoured. The architect of the garden must think not only of shapes and species, but of experiences, moments of joy, of contemplation, of connection. The design is successful not when it looks perfect, but when it is lived in, when it welcomes laughter, thought, and quiet breath. Thus, as the second stage of the garden unfolds, the focus shifts from vision to experience, from structure to flow, paths, focal points, seating, vertical elements, water, light, texture, seasonality, sustainability, and human presence, all combine to shape a living, breathing space. It is architecture in its most organic form, a structure not of steel and stone, but of soil, light, and life. It is the art of making the natural deliberate, the everyday extraordinary, and the ordinary deeply human. When the design of a garden reaches its final stage, I turn from the principles of planning and the creation of flow to the refinement of atmosphere, identity, and long-term endurance. A garden, like a work of architecture, must not only be built, it must be maintained, adapted, and allowed to mature. It is in this maturation that its true character emerges. The greatest buildings reveal new meanings over decades, sometimes centuries. A garden, though shorter in lifespan, carries the same lesson. It is a living structure, and its beauty deepens when it is cared for with patience and respect. At this stage, the details become crucial. Just as the finishing touches of a building, its railings, textures, or interior accents determine its final elegance, the garden depends on finishing gestures to achieve completeness. Borders must be refined, whether by tightening the edge of a path, arranging stones with greater precision, or trimming plants to reveal intended lines. Containers may be repainted, worn furniture may be restored, and accents may be rotated seasonally to keep freshness alive. These small refinements do not demand high cost, but they give clarity to the design, ensuring the garden appears intentional rather than accidental. Identity is reinforced through repetition. In architecture, motifs, arches, columns, recurring patterns tie together the structure. In the garden, repetition of certain plants, colors, or forms creates coherence. A row of lavender echoed in another corner, the recurrence of stone edging, or the repetition of a particular hue across different blooms binds the entire space into a unified whole. Without repetition, a garden risks becoming chaotic. With it, the design feels deliberate and graceful. This principle is particularly valuable for beginners, for it ensures that even with a modest palette of plants and materials, the space achieves harmony. Long-term endurance depends on cultivating resilience. Plants must be chosen not only for immediate effect, but for their ability to return, to endure weather, to resist neglect. Structures, whether trellises, raised beds, or compost bins, must be built with sturdiness in mind. Even the placement of paths must consider wear, water flow, and erosion. The architect of the garden must anticipate not only how it looks today, but how it will live tomorrow, next year, and in the seasons beyond. This foresight, this care for continuity, is what allows the garden to become part of daily life, rather than a temporary spectacle. Personal expression must never be forgotten. A home reflects its owner, and so too must a garden. Each gardener should allow their spirit to leave marks upon the soil. Painted stones with meaningful symbols, a handmade mosaic, or a chair in one's favorite color transform the garden into an autobiography. The garden becomes a mirror of identity, a place where personality takes root and blossoms. This personal expression is what elevates the design from a generic composition into a unique creation, impossible to replicate because it is intertwined with memory and individuality. Community too finds its place in the garden. Just as public buildings gather people, a garden has the power to draw family, neighbors, and friends. Sharing seeds, exchanging plants, inviting others to sit, or allowing children to play cultivates not only soil but also relationships. A garden is generous by nature. Its fruits, its beauty, and its lessons are meant to be shared. This generosity amplifies its impact, transforming it from a private sanctuary into a communal gift. Adaptability is a final hallmark of good design. Seasons shift, climates alter, personal needs evolve. A garden must be able to change with them. Raised beds can be expanded or reduced. Annual plants can be raised by different varieties each year. Seating can be moved as shade patterns evolve. Even mistakes once realized can be redesigned into opportunities. A gardener who embraces adaptability ensures that the garden remains alive in spirit, never frozen in one moment, but continuously renewed. In addition to adaptability, the practice of reflection shapes the endurance of the garden. To walk through it with observant eyes, to notice which plants thrive and which struggle, to record notes and adjustments, is to engage in a dialogue with the space. This dialogue is essential, for it turns gardening from mere labor into artistry. With each passing season, the gardener becomes wiser, more attuned, more skilled, and the garden becomes more refined, more resonant, more complete. Over time, the garden becomes more than a project. It becomes a ritual. The act of watering in the morning, of walking the paths in the evening, of noticing the play of light and shadow across leaves. These are not chores, but meditations. They slow the pace of life, draw attention to small wonders, and restore balance to the mind. Just as great architecture inspires awe and reverence, a well-designed garden inspires peace and presence. It is a daily sanctuary, available without travel, without expense, simply by stepping outside. In its fullest expression, the garden is both humble and profound. It is humble because it thrives on reuse, patience, and simplicity. Seeds instead of instant plants, compost instead of chemical fertilizer, reclaimed objects instead of costly purchases. It is profound because, through these humble choices, it creates an atmosphere of sanctuary, beauty, and identity. It reminds us that design is not about extravagance, but about intention, that elegance is not measured by cost, but by harmony. And so, when the garden is complete, or rather when it has reached its current stage of completion, it stands as a testament. It testifies to creativity, to resourcefulness, to the human ability to shape nature without dominating it, to compose with what is available rather than what is expensive. Each plant, each stone, each accent carries meaning. Together, they create a living architecture, a place where one can breathe deeply, rest fully, and feel at home, not only in the space, but in the world itself. This is the essence of a garden makeover done with imagination and care. It is not a temporary decoration, but a lifelong practice. It is not a display for others, but a refuge for oneself and a gift to those invited in. It is not limited by size, by wealth, or by perfection. It is limitless because it grows not only in soil, but in the heart. In this way, the garden, like every great design, transcends material and becomes experience, a sanctuary of life shaped by human hands, yet animated by the eternal rhythm of nature.